to the Norwegian Microsoft 365 community.
Thank you, Merete. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining in this evening. My name is Cristina Staiano, as Merete just said. I work as a Senior Customer Success Manager at Microsoft. You can feel free to contact me and connect with me on LinkedIn by scanning the QR code on your right side in the presentation. You will also find this in the last slide, so don't worry, you will have plenty of time to contact me on LinkedIn. But today we're going to talk about how to plan for a successful adoption of Microsoft Teams. And I will be going through some methodologies and theories which can be useful for adopting technology in general, and also when it comes to implementing other changes in your organization. And in my presentation today, I have mixed some well-known theories with some of my own thoughts, which I hope will provide some insight and hopefully also some inspiration for you. So, if we look at this quote, this is from our CEO, Satya Nadella, and it's from his book that he published in 2019. Yes, I know that it says 2018 on the slide, but the book was published in 2019. And an article from Harvard Business Review actually states that building a culture of trust is what makes a meaningful difference. Employees in high trust organizations are more productive, they have more energy at work, they collaborate better with their colleagues, and they stay with their employers longer than people working at low trust companies. They actually also suffer less chronic stress and are happier with their lives. And these factors fuel stronger performance. But how do you bring coherence around ideas, goals, actions, and values that drive teams? So let's watch a short video made by Dan Heath, an American best-selling author, a speaker, and also a professor at Duke University. But before we do that, I will have to ask you, Merete, because I think, and this is a learning for myself as well, I think I made the rookie mistake of not turning off on the sound. So let's just try and stop me if you don't hear music instantly.
Okay, we'll do that.
Give it a go.
We can hear it. Yes, I can hear it.
No rookie mistake from us.
Psychologists know that there are two systems in our brains, the rational system and the emotional system. Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist at NYU, came up with a great analogy for these two systems. He said, think of your brain as a human rider atop an elephant. The rider represents the rational system. That's the part of us that plans and problem solves. The rider might do some analyzing and decide, hey, I want to go that way. But it's the elephant, representing the emotional system, that provides the power for the journey. The rider can try to lead the elephant or drag the elephant, but if these two ever disagree, who would you bet on? The elephant has a 6-ton weight advantage, and it's exactly that power imbalance that makes adopting new behaviors very hard. If you want this duo to head a new direction, you also need to think about the path, which represents the external environment. This duo is more likely to complete a journey if you can shorten the distance and remove any obstacles in their way. So bottom line, if you want to lead change, you've got to do 3 things. Give direction to the rider, knowledge of how to get to the destination. You've got to motivate the elephant, which means tapping into emotion. And finally, you need to shape the path to allow for easy progress. That's how change happens.
So what he mentioned in this video were 3 steps that are needed to create change. So the first one was give direction, including knowledge on how to reach the goal. And the second one was to motivate, to tap into the heart and to really create the desire to reach the goal. And the third one was to shape the path, to define how to reach the goal and also to remove obstacles. So these are the steps that are needed to create change. But if we now put this in the context of reaching the organization's goals, we need to talk about how do we set goals and how do we incentivize organizations to want to reach these goals. And by the organization, we mean the individuals that really form up the organization itself. So how do we set goals? When we dig into this topic, let's talk a little bit about goal setting theory. And goal setting theory was first introduced in 1968 by a researcher named Edwin Locke. So his goal setting theory is both well known and well used. And it is still ranked as #1 in scientific validity and #2 in usability amongst 15 other goal setting theories. And in many ways, his goal-setting theory gave the blueprint for modern workplace motivation by making the direct relationship between goals, productivity, and employee engagement both clear and actionable. And here, the main focus is the goal's meaning as a motivational factor. The goal is the main focus for what needs to be done and the degree of effort that needs to be put into reaching the goal. And Locke demonstrated that the best way to feel motivated is actually to push yourself to do something that you're not 100% certain that you can achieve. But tackling challenging goals head first allows you really to work hard and to develop your skills and to reap the rewards in terms of positive feedback and also a sense of personal achievement. And Locke later teamed up with his colleague Gary Latham, who was also working on goal-setting theory, and together they created Locke and Latham's 5 principles of effective goal setting. And these principles are clarity, challenge, commitment, feedback, and task complexity. Now, I don't expect you to remember them by heart just by me saying them out loud, but we will have a look at a couple of these and hopefully put them into some context. So if you take a couple of seconds to look at that cartoon and read what it's saying, you can start thinking about which of the principles that we're going to talk about now. So obviously you see, I'm not sure if it's called Dilbert in English, but it's definitely called Dilbert in Norwegian. And obviously, his boss is asking him about his unspoken objectives. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And the boss is, the goals I never told you about. So the first principle is clarity. And a goal must be specific and clear. You need to know what to expect and what leads to success. And vague instructions such as complete your work to a higher standard are less motivating than specific targets, even hard, but specific targets like increase sales by 20%. So this doesn't sound too difficult now, does it? But I really want to complicate it a bit. And I want to bring in some other elements, such as what about how we as humans and how we as individuals interpret the information that we're given or the information that we find and really how we see the world. So this picture is called La trahison des images, which is French for the treachery of images. This is an oil painting by a surrealist painter who's called René Magritte. Now you might say, I signed up for this change management course on how to learn how to increase adoption and to implement technology. Why is she talking about this? But just bear with me for a second or maybe a minute. And you will hopefully understand. Now, surrealism is an art form that began in 1917, and it was inspired by the unconscious in us as human beings. And surrealist artists such as Salvador Dali, Max Ernst, and René Magritte thought that surrealism could bring us in contact with the unknown and what goes on in our head without us being aware of it. And this inspiration came from Sigmund Freud, who was the father of psychoanalysis and who believed that the unknown tells us deep truths about ourselves, and that by realizing these truths, we change our perception of reality. So by realizing a certain truth, we change the way we see the world. And this painting shows a pipe, and below it, Magritte painted "Ceci n'est pas une pipe." This is French for "this is not a pipe." And what he himself, René Magritte, stated afterwards was, "Oh, how people reproached me for this text. And yet, could you stuff my pipe? No, it's just a representation, is it not? So if I had written on my picture, 'This is a pipe,' I would have been lying." And what he's trying to do is to focus on the difference between an actual object and the representation of it. Because even if we don't think about it in our everyday lives, everything we communicate and perceive from our surroundings are part of a system of signs, symbols, and codes. And the way we interpret these signs, these signs, symbols, and codes differs between us. The way I interpret them differs from the way my colleagues interpret them, from the way my children interpret them, from the way my friends interpret them. And that is an important point when we want to or need to create clarity, and also when it comes to culture. Your colleagues or employees' system may not be the same as yours. So just bear that in mind. Back to the principles. Now, principle 2 and 3 are challenge and commitment. And what he saw was that an easy or tedious goal is demotivating. I've already stated this, that it's more motivating to have a challenging goal. But be realistic, to keep a realistic balance. Don't expect anyone on your team to spin straw into goal. But specific goals, specific challenging goals, resulted in bigger performances than general goals. It's also important to give feedback along the way. So, challenging and commitment. Your employees have to understand and buy into the goal from the outset, and hopefully they have been able to participate in the creation of the goal. And also the goals need to be consistent with the company's organizational mission, vision, and purpose. So, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I'm sure many of us have heard this quote before. This is a quote by Peter Drucker, who is one of the main thinkers and practitioners of modern management. And the underlying meaning of this quote is that the culture within an organization, the way we do things here, the culture, is the main limiting and also the main crucial factor to create actual results. And when talking about change, culture is an extremely important point. And research shows that there is direct and strong correlation between a company's culture and its result. And research also shows that trust-based culture and management give the best results. But in spite of this, a recent study by INSEAD Business School showed that only 1 out of 5 top managers see it as their responsibility to allocate time to build or change culture. So, in regards to this, is the technology we use part of our culture? The way we do things here, is the technology part of that? And if yes, if the answer to that question is yes, that means that we need to treat the introduction of new technology in the same way we would treat any other change. So when we change the systems or tools we use, we are also tapping into and disrupting the way we do things here. That is the organizational culture. And when dealing with change, we also have to understand the change curve. Now, change is a human process that has nothing to do with technology. There is behavioral and neuroscience that educates us about the natural resistance to change. As human beings, we are hardwired to resist change. It's the fear, the fight or flight mode, and we are actually from early on in our evolution wired to resist change. So resistance is normal, and it is critical to anticipate the needs of your users and also to communicate with empathy and your understanding of their situation, and to create solutions for them that materially improve their situation. But you need to anticipate and plan ahead for change, because you will encounter change. And the change curve by Cynthia Scott and Dennis Jeff show the different phases that we as human beings go through. And the time it takes to go through all of these phases and to hopefully end up in a status of commitment in the organization differs both in terms of the organization itself, in terms of individuals, in terms of teams, etc. There are large individual differences. But by creating clarity, having commitment on the goals, having challenging goals, these are all factors that will help in minimizing at least the first two phases. So the denial phase is the phase where I obviously stick my head in the sand, hoping this will go away. Oh no, it's just a bad dream. I will not take this in. I will absolutely pretend it's not there. And that's a phase where there is a lot of resistance, and there is frustration, and there is fear, and there is really a lot of uncertainty. So clarity in that phase is really, really crucial. And the focus in this phase is connected to personal changes and personal fears. So what is this change doing with me, with my job? What does this really mean, etc., etc. Then you slowly go from sticking your head into the sand and pretending it's not there to active resistance. No, I hate this. Things were a lot better before, and mark that things were a lot better before. This phase is where you think backwards. You think about the past. We have always done this in a certain way. It has always worked. Why do we have to change, etc. And that phase can really be minimized by good change management and really helping people to see the benefits, to understand the why, to know which direction you're going into will help that phase. And then we'll push them into the exploration phase, where there is a lot of more positive energy and creativity, but there is still a feeling of uncertainty and stress because things haven't landed yet. There still isn't that clear structure that we as human beings really want to have. And so it's important to just be aware of that even though sort of heads are popping up and smiles are coming on the faces, there is still the risk of slipping back into resistance. So keep up the good work here. And then when you go into commitment, you have hopefully created the clarity, you have gotten commitment on the goal, the employees have been part of understanding why and hopefully creating the goals themselves. So this is the change curve one-on-one in 30 seconds. It obviously has a lot of more subtleties to it, but I think the main take here is that resistance is normal. So anticipate resistance and plan for it. Create a plan for it. So when it comes to adoption of new technology builds obviously also a lot on what we have been going through in the goal setting theory. Since the change is still about people and how we do things, We change a habit, we change ourselves, and we change our culture. And it actually is proven that most employees are not willing to use new technology when it's rolled out by their organization. So what we have seen is, here again, the principle of clarity is of massive importance, both in terms of clear goals, but also more practically when it comes to support from colleagues and visibility from management. And again, research has shown that when a CEO was either fairly or very visible, a change project was either very successful or extremely successful, as opposed to when the CEO or the top management was not visible at all. So if we look at numbers and benefits, what portion of the project benefits depend on adoption and usage? So when you create a project, you also create a baseline for expected project benefits that sum up to 100. These are the benefits I expect to come out of the project once I have finished it. And next, imagine that we have a really technical project, sort of like introducing a new button in Outlook. Something maybe you can order food from the meeting invitation. So you have a button to order food from the meeting invitation. So this is mainly a technical deployment. People know how to use the mail, they know how to invite for meetings, and this button is just a minor addition to an already known and established both way of working and technology that we're using. So here you could say that the split is probably 80-20, 80 in terms of the deployment, the benefits from the deployment will come, and you need to give maybe send an email or do some small training on the people side to get the benefit there. But then let's imagine that we have a project like, for instance, Microsoft Teams. In these projects, simply deploying the technology will not get you the majority of benefits. And while a few early adopters might sort of jump into and use the system, in fact, you actually need to change the behavior of the people, the culture of the organization for the work to, for the value to be achieved. So you need to change the way people do things. So you really need to consider how much of your value is tied up in needing people to change, and then how much of your project budget is invested or allocated to that part. And in Microsoft, we have a structure where we look at these success factors. So the first one, which is the stakeholders, is super important. As stated, when the CEO was either fairly visible or very visible, it was make or break for the project. And that's the same here, particularly when it comes to cultural change. So recruit your executive sponsors. Have someone in the top management really be a flag bearer for the change and really create clarity and create commitment and show what we're going to achieve here. But also establish success owners. And success owners are the people who own the goals. So who is owning the goals? Who will not be able to achieve their goals if this change doesn't sort of follow through? And also empower champions. Champions are a super important asset in any change management project. So by having your champion next to you, your colleague that you can ask about something, who is constantly telling you about how you can do this, how you can do that, why this worked in that department, and what your other colleague has learned, etc. It's so empowering to hear it from a colleague rather than reading it in an email or getting a video or something. It really taps into the way we learn. We do the training and we learn, and then we actively integrate a part of the learning, and to having the champion next to you and saying, yes, you're doing it right, or no, you should do it that way, really creates a good momentum. Then it's the scenarios. So prioritize the scenarios. How are we going to change? Who is going to change? And what benefits are you getting from it? And also define the success criteria. So sometimes I hear that companies say, this and that technology, but I'm not getting out of it what I thought I would get out of it. Oh, it's not working for me. I'm not getting the benefits I wanted. Then my question is, okay, what benefits were you expecting? And how are you measuring it? And I have to say, more often than not, they have not identified any benefits. And they are not measuring anything. So you will never find something if you don't know what you're looking for. It sounds like a stupid thing to say, but people are actually expecting things to pop up without them looking for it, and it will not. So define the success criteria. What is success for you in your organization? And how will I know when I have reached that success? How can I actually measure it? And I'm probably a simple creature, but I think that most things can be measured, either one way or another. And obviously, monitoring adoption is one way of measuring. So do that, monitor adoption. But monitoring adoption is also a way of monitoring the change itself. Are we as an organization really embracing this technology? Yes or no? And then it's the awareness phase. So establish a communication plan and really build on everything that you have done up until now. So the clarity, why are we doing this? And the heart, tap into the heart, what's in it for me? And removing of the obstacles. Tell about the obstacles that people have encountered and how they have now been removed for everyone to see. So really communicate. And execute launch events so that people know that, oh, it was today. Now it's coming our way. And share successes, because by sharing successes, obviously you create enthusiasm, but you also create sparks of new ideas. Oh, they did it like that in that department. Maybe we can do it in another way here just by tweaking something, or we can do it in the same way and we will also have a success. So share the success. And last but definitely not least is training. So train end users and have a help desk ready for when the users need it. And change takes time. So this is the model that we use in Microsoft for our own cultural change. And we address each of these components with intention and in an ongoing way. So we learn and we iterate, we create meaning and we activate. And then we activate and we learn and we iterate and we create meaning and we do it again and again. And we're investing in our evolution and there is no end point. Rome was not built in a day, and change takes time, and cultural evolution is just that. It's an evolution. And for change to stick, it has to be driven from the top down. And employees have to feel safe and empowered to change, and their managers and leaders are critical in supporting those changes. So with that, I will say thank you for your attention. Again, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. I will turn off the presentation now and I will be here probably for the next 10 minutes, Merete, for questions.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
good. Awesome. I'll turn off the recording.
Yeah. So thank you.